All right, we're live.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, thank you for joining us. If you read the tagline, you know this is a different stream than usual. We're running things a little bit differently, but you know, stay tuned next week. We'll be back to our usual shenanigans probably.
Yes.
But yeah, given everything that's going on in the world, we wanted to kind of take some time, especially like now that we've got like a bigger platform. We hit 1,000 subscribers now. We want to, yeah,
Yay! 1,000 subscribers.
We're like, you know, might as well use this space to announce a feeling we've had but never like said publicly on this channel necessarily. So
yeah,
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
In case y'all didn't know we had that opinion, that is the opinion we have.
That is the opinion.
Yeah. So yeah, we just wanted to take some time, kind of talk about like our experiences, like me as a Black woman, and as an ally, and like kind of discuss like what allyship means and like where we go going forward. We also kind of want to take the time to like announce some organizations that we've donated to and kind of recommend you guys donate to. Do you have the links to drop?
Yes, the links are currently in the description.
Okay.
I'm also going to throw them in the chat right now.
Yes.
So we've chosen a couple from a couple different fields.
Yes.
So
is National Bailout Funds link in there?
Oh, I guess not.
Okay.
National Bailout isn't in here, but I'll add National Bailout in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. But so the one, and I'll find National Bailout right quick so everyone can donate to them as well if you're feeling.
Yeah. But that is also
to do
an important one.
Yes.
But also on there we've got Reclaim the Black, which is a organization I found out about like a week ago, and it's a Minnesota-based thing, and they're just looking to get donations to reallocate funds from the police into the community so they can kind of get hands-on funds to kind of better develop themselves. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important. And in there, I've also got Lit MKE. Make sure you go to litmke.org because there's also Lit MKE that's like candles. But that's
you could also go buy candles.
But this one's more important.
This one's more important.
Yeah, and that's local to us, local to Milwaukee, and that's just kind of focused on training youths in the community to be community oriented on change and development. So, you know, help the kids for a brighter tomorrow and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, building leaders in their neighborhoods to focus on their neighborhoods. Important stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I think we also have the National Black Justice Coalition in there.
Yes. That's an LGBTQ plus focused organization focused on, you know, ending homophobia and racism for Black LGBTQ plus, you know, we're not liberated until we're all liberated.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And obviously the intersection of LGBTQ and people of color leads to even more issues and problems, you know, abuses. Yeah. And then last one was National Bailout.
Yes.
So this is an organization dedicated to ending mass incarceration. The money that they use right now, their campaign right now is to bail out mothers and parental caregivers. So these are people who are currently, they were charged with a crime. They haven't seen trial yet. They're trying to get them back to their kids while they are in county jails across the country. So they're, Free Black Mamas 2020 is what they're calling. So, all right. So.
Yeah, this stream, you know, we usually go an hour. This one might not, just because it is an emotionally draining topic. And it was kind of one I was kind of worried for us to do just because, you know, emotional racial anxiety is real and it's going to take a lot out of me. So we hope that you guys are understanding and we'll see where this goes. We have a loose structure, but we'll see where things go.
Yeah.
So you're going to see me flipping through this notebook a lot because I wrote down a lot of my feelings, which is not something I do a lot. I like to internalize a lot. So first, I think one of the first things we're going to do is just set our ground rules for how we want today to go. The rules
are in the description.
Yes, but we're just going to go over them again. Yeah, we're going to go over them again, make sure things don't get out of hand. You know, number one, no hate speech. these rules are coming in no particular order, but yeah, no hate speech is the obvious one. No trolling. Don't say anything you don't mean. You know, if you say something you think you're joking, like someone's gonna take you seriously, don't be that person.
Yeah, we're not here to be humorous. This is if you're gonna say something in the comments, it's gotta be what you believe, what you think.
Yes. Yeah. And then that being said, what else? We don't want like all lives matter and blue lives matter comments, because we're specifically talking about Black Lives Matter tonight. And for those of you who might not understand why those statements are problematic, all lives matter, you know, we know they should matter, but we live in a society where Black lives are undervalued. So saying all lives matter takes away from that. Yes, all lives should matter, but we need to focus on making sure that people understand that Black lives matter so that all lives do matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And if you want, you know, that's something, if you got a problem with that, don't bring it here.
Yeah.
This is not the time to discuss that. Yeah. You email me, therockcutreview@gmail. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Yeah.
That's not the time to talk about it right now.
Like there's a lot to unpack on this subject. So, I mean, there's a lot we're not going to cover. This is kind of just meant to be like a starting point. Mm-hmm. So we kind of hope that at the end of this, you'll go off, do your own research, look at some of the resources we'll talk about at the end, and go from there.
Yeah.
What else? We're not going to shame protesters. Like there's been a lot of that being like, there's a right way to protest, there's a wrong way to protest. We're not doing that. We at the channel, life is greater than property. So if you're a person upset about like rights and stuff, again, I'm just going to emphasize life is greater than property, and that's really not up for debate. What else? Kind of related to that, we know people are going to have questions. Just kind of make sure you ask them respectfully. You know, think before you type out. Make sure if you're asking a question, it's not coming from a disrespectful angle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's all be open-minded and be willing to learn.
Willing to learn.
Yeah.
That's one important. Yeah. And just in general, don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
That's the simple synopsis.
Yeah. 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 And I think we should also emphasize we've got our moderator crew in the chat tonight.
Yeah.
If anybody is trolling, being a dick, it's a permaban.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
You're not coming back. This one's too serious. So.
And I think we recruited a couple extra moderators tonight. So thank you everyone who showed up, and thank you everyone who's a moderator. We genuinely appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope we have a good talk tonight.
Yeah.
So, all right, this is tough for me. So I was gonna start by telling you just like my experiences being Black, being a woman, and specifically being a Black woman and what that means in today's society. And I think that, like when Ed first mentioned wanting to do this topic as a stream, I got super nervous. And I think my reasons for being nervous are something that's worth bringing up, especially in relation to Black Lives Matter. In general, I'm a person who does not like to share that much. Like I'm not good at being vulnerable. And I think especially on this topic, it's hard for me to be vulnerable as a Black woman. I know a lot of these subscribers are generally like white males. So like it's hard for me to come from like my experience and put that out there to people who might not necessarily understand. So yeah, a lot of racial anxiety. I think especially as I sat with my thoughts, the thing it kind of came back to the most, and like when I kind of said it out loud to myself, said it out loud in my brain, it made me feel really depressed, was realizing that a big part of why I don't like to be emotionally vulnerable is just, as a Black woman in America, it is so hard to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And that's physical safety and emotional safety. I feel like it's hard to challenge the grain, and like you can be met with people kind of either completely dismissing your experiences and emotions, or even like it escalates to the point where people get like death threats. And I was so afraid to put myself out there. So I'm hoping we avoid all that. That'll be good. And it's a lot. It's, I constantly feel these feelings of anger and depression about the way the world works and the way the world views me and how that's going to affect going forward. And I think that also, like, I'm 26 years old. I know a lot. There's a lot of stereotypes about the angry Black woman. So I feel like a lot I've had to like internalize because I'm worried about respectability politics. Like there's just a lot going through my mind that constantly affects every single action I take, every single word I like bring up. And that makes it rough. That makes it rough for Black folks to exist, and it makes it difficult to speak up. So be conscious of that going forward. It's also, this stream is a lot of emotional labor. It's already hard enough going through kind of having to think out and plot out my actions, my speech and everything. And then, you know, being alone with that knowledge is one thing, but having to like put it all out there, say it out loud, like it's a lot. Like again, yesterday I had to say to myself, like I rarely feel safe. I don't know if there's ever been a place I've like truly felt safe as a Black woman in America. So putting it all out there and just hoping that people understand and are willing to like work to hopefully make me and others feel safe, it's a lot. So yeah. So I think that was mainly it for me. I think given what this channel's kind of brand and audience is, we wanted to more discuss what it means to be an ally and like how to be a good ally. Just because I think there's a lot of people out there who claim to be allies and they make a lot of missteps. And like we said earlier in the rules, you have to be willing to learn. And I think that's a big key to allyship as well.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah. That's all I got. Do you have the graphic about what it means to be an ally?
For sure.
Okay. So Stefan, yeah, this really handy breakdown. It's from Amelie Lamont. She has a whole website that we will also link later, just about what it means to be an ally and like how to be a good ally.
I can throw it in right now.
Highly recommend people check out that site. Coming soon.
I think it might also help to talk about like what an ally is and allyship.
Yes. And it kind of starts with, you know, these 4 questions. Or not 4 questions, 4 statements. You know, take on the struggle as your own. Stand up even if you feel scared. Transfer the benefits of your privilege to those who lack it. And acknowledge that while you too feel pain, this conversation is not about you. And I kind of think that one's the biggest one.
Sure.
You know, I'll take that back. I won't say it's the biggest one, but I think that's the issue I see the most. I feel like a lot of people will try to claim the first 3 without doing the work on the 4th.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
I do think, as someone who's struggled with how to be an ally as well,
mm-hmm.
I think it's very easy, especially for white liberals, to think that they know the struggle and want to be able to tell Black people what the solution is.
Yeah.
Rather than actually listening about what the problem is.
Yeah.
And listening to what people need.
Yeah. Which is not helpful.
Yeah.
And then also we were talking last night about just things we've encountered and allies that we would like to stop seeing. So things to, you know, if any of this kind of rings true to you, self-internalize, work on it.
Right.
The one thing I immediately wrote down is be careful that your allyship doesn't veer into savior territory.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of that was part of what you just mentioned, is if you're going to be an ally, be there, but don't try to usurp the movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, don't view it as like, oh, you're sacrificing so much. Like, being an ally is work, and you're going to take on that work. You don't need to get praise for it.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you deserve praise for it, you're not a real ally. That's you kind of co-opt. That's the 4th thing I was mentioning. That's you co-opting and making it about yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a tendency. I've worked a lot of nonprofit jobs. I think there's a tendency for people who truly believe that they're anti-racist and they're pro Black Lives Matter. I think there's a tendency for the white people to assume that they should have leadership roles and assume that they should be in charge.
Yeah.
I think it's just an extension of white privilege into the sphere.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, I know we talked about it with no specific job coming up, but like one of your previous jobs, like because there's like educational disparities, you see like white people with degrees like getting elevated in management roles in nonprofits.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have the experience, and like it really creates this disparity where they're getting elevated, but they might not necessarily be the right person to do the job.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of my work, we were working in we're working in a majority African American city,
mm-hmm.
and we're working in majority African American neighborhoods. But a lot of the people who were in position to do the direct work had little to no experience with those neighborhoods, with how life was there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I got a lot written down here. Sorry.
Yeah.
You can already hear my voice getting crackly.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Take your time.
We're doing great. Yeah, like Ed said, not listening. And something I've noticed a lot this week is I feel like there's been a lot of allies not listening when like Black folk talk about burnout, which is real. Again, touched on it earlier. This is a lot of emotional labor. So when I talked about like sometimes it's good for me to internalize, I just need to feel joy sometimes. So when you hear Black folk saying like they need to step away, they don't want to think about it right now, listen, shit is hard. If they say they don't feel like doing it right now, you need to understand that. Don't say like, this is the thing we need to do. Let them take care of themselves. Existence is resistance.
Yeah.
So
I think that's something I never understood.
Yeah.
You know, I think because I'm in a position of privilege where I don't have to worry. I'm not worried about my safety.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about how I'm going to be treated by the outside world.
Mm.
It's very easy for me to feel like I want to take action and I want to push and do things. But that's a privilege I have.
Mm.
I don't have to struggle with this every second.
Another common thing, don't use MLK to justify your bullshit respectability politics. In case, yeah, that's a big one. It's come up a lot. Like a lot of people are sharing like, oh, like the civil rights movement was like very different. Like that was vilified at the time too. So we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
MLK was assassinated. So don't pretend he also wasn't met with like some tension.
Right.
Yeah. We're not doing that.
I think white folks like to look back to the nice Black person, the nice Black hero that they can say, this is what you should be like.
Yeah. And it's a very sanitized version of Martin Luther King. Like there's other quotes, like he's had quotes about riots and everything too. So like, just don't, you can't do that.
Right. It's a 2D version of the man.
Yeah.
You're using as a prop.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't co-opt certain aspects of a movement and expect people to be okay with that. Yeah. And colorblind ideology. It sucks. Don't do it. Don't be one of those people who says, I don't see color, because you think you're being helpful, but you're not. Like a lot of my experiences in life are related to the fact that I am a Black woman. It navigates the way I see the world. When you say I don't see color, it says that like you just don't want to deal with the problem, because racism is a problem. Like you can't just say I don't see color and expect people to just kind of dismiss it as like, oh, okay, that person's not racist, because it's very much a racist statement. Like there's a lot of things, there's a lot of issues in society tied down to what people perceive of people of different races. You can't just say you don't see the problem. That's what you're saying when you don't see color. Is I don't want to deal with the problem, so I just don't see it. I choose not to acknowledge it.
Right.
Yeah. And that therefore makes you part of the problem.
I also think people are people who say they don't see color are lying to themselves and to everyone else.
Yeah, you only say that to people of color, so don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Behind closed doors, I'm sure you see color and you talk about it all the goddamn time.
Exactly. So yeah, and I think that kind of links to one of the ones we discussed like at length, because we live in Milwaukee. We both grew up in Milwaukee. Me, Milwaukee proper. You, Shorewood. What is the word I'm looking for? Suburb of Milwaukee. which for those of you who don't know, don't live here, it's continuously ranked one of the most segregated cities. So
yeah, we were number one for, I think, when we were growing up.
Yeah.
For the longest time, we were the most segregated city in the entire country.
Yeah, and Chicago beat us, but I think we took that back at some point. Not a good thing to be proud of.
Yeah.
I
think
we are not proud of it, but I
think Bill Bastrade brings up an excellent point.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the issue, is like we shouldn't have to try to appeal to the masses, because the masses kind of hold this idea of like what things should be, and we need to challenge that. Things need to change. Mm-hmm. So if we're trying to appeal to the masses, then we're not really trying to change anything. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, going back to what we were saying about things we see in allyship that kind of we as both saw growing up in a segregated city is there are a lot of people who assume what racism only looks like one thing, and it only looks like white hoods, cross burnings, and it's very specific to America and very specific to the American South and very specific to the American South.
Right.
Racism is everywhere. It lives in our northern city. It lives in like our suburbs where our white liberals are. Mm-hmm. And it also, like, we have some international subscribers. I know there are people out there who like claim like, oh, this country's not racist. It's everywhere.
Right.
It looks different in different countries based on how history is like played out, but racism is everywhere. And if this kind of relates back to colorblind theory, if you are a person who says, oh, there is no problem, you're part of the problem.
Right.
Because you're not allowing anything to be fixed.
I think the ideology of racism has been so entrenched and so widespread. I mean, it spread with the colonialism.
Yeah.
Even in countries with majority Black people, the anti-Blackness
is global.
Anti-Blackness is everywhere.
Yeah.
Australia, Africa, wherever. It's.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the world has gotten comfortable like deflecting this idea of racism and vilifying a group of people that they're comfortable with so that they don't have to confront their own racism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, especially in America, I was talking about Ben Eves from My Whiskey Den has a stream, went on just before this one over on Facebook talking about similar topics. Mm-hmm. And I think they were talking about why the North was really like the North coming down and stopping slavery.
Yeah.
Read
about that.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot there too.
But the point is that I think Northerners have always been very quick to be anti-Southern racism.
Yeah.
But we have always also been very quick to defend our own version of racism.
Yeah.
It may not have been quite as outwardly apparent, but as soon as MLK came to Chicago, as soon as Father Grappi marched in Wisconsin, whites who had supported them in the South became incensed and became incredibly violent towards their Black neighbors.
Yeah.
White Northerners are just as racist as Southerners.
And they hate to believe it because they lean on this crutch of like, oh, we're more educated, so we couldn't be racist. And it's just, you can be educated and still be a racist. A college degree is not going to stop you from being a racist.
Right. You just learn to hide it better.
Yeah. Yeah. You use that fancy degree to logic out of your racism.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Please.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
I think that's something. I think, you know what? I think part of maybe, and I don't know, maybe you don't want to agree with this and you can tell me, but I think part of being a good ally is acknowledging that somewhere in your heart of hearts, if you're a white person living in America or maybe anywhere in the world, I can't speak to that, but I think,
as we said, anti-Blackness is global, so anywhere in the world.
But I think acknowledging that somewhere deep in your heart of hearts, you're a racist.
Yeah.
Not that you are outwardly racist, not that you are.
But you've had some racist thoughts.
At some point, you've had some racist thoughts, and you grew up in a racist society.
Yeah.
And even if you are working as hard as you can, those stereotypes still pop up in your head.
Yeah.
You know, you can be as progressive and as anti-racist as you can be, but unless you are constantly like trying to work on yourself, we grow up with so much racist bullshit that is just in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I've not been paying attention to the comments.
I know we've not been paying much attention to the comments.
Yeah,
sorry about
if we're
that.
not. We had a lot to get out, but yeah.
I think. Yeah, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I feel like that's the good point to jump into. Like discussing how like we live in a racist society. I think that's a good point to jump into how we got from like slavery to where we are now.
Yeah.
Especially this kind of section is more focused on Milwaukee, again, incredibly segregated city.
Yeah.
This nice graphic came from Ben and Jerry's. A lot of people like to claim that slavery ended, not slavery ended, like racism ended right after the civil rights movement. You know, like on paper, Black people are equal. So why are we still having this debate? And I think Ben and Jerry's kind of has this great timeline that like Ed is going to kind of further explain how it feeds into racism today.
Yeah, I think this, and a lot of this is in particular my experience working with people returning from prison in the Milwaukee area, which unfortunately a lot of those people are Black men. And I'll get into why that is in a second. Not because Black men commit more crimes. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Proportionally, whites and Blacks, when you control for social economic status, everybody commits about the same amount of crime.
Yeah. I feel like there was also a statistic like specifically focusing on drugs, because we could do a whole stream about like the war on drugs.
The war on drugs.
The Reagan era. But like, I can't remember who said, but they were like, if you walked into like a white college dorm at any time, like you're more likely to find drugs there than like on any random black person.
For sure. White people do a ton of drugs.
Yeah.
White people love cocaine.
Yeah.
But
like
they don't go to jail for it.
Yeah. And like you can even like kind of talk about how the fact that like the war on drugs focused on Black neighborhoods versus like now we have the opioid crisis.
Right.
Because it hit white suburbs and now it's like, oh, we need to save the children versus like when Black people were doing it, it's like vilify them. We're done. We're not scourge on society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also AJ Lopez does bring a good point. Anti-Blackness has spread out amongst other oppressed ethnicities.
Yeah, it's global.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating. And I think that's something that's also come up in a lot of topics I've been having with friends is like there are going to be times when we say POC and it's a great umbrella term, but there are going to be times when you need to say Black. Like there are certain experiences that Black people go through the world experiencing, and some of them come from other POC, which hurts. So if we're going to be talking about Black Lives Matter, we need to talk about Black Lives Matter. And like, yes, again, as we said earlier, all lives should matter, but anti-Blackness is global and it is constantly devalued Black lives.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up, AJ Lopez.
I think talking about Milwaukee specifically.
Yes.
And speaking about, we talk about, Southern racism. Everybody knows about Jim Crow.
Yes.
Everybody knows about laws that were put into place, specifically to keep Blacks and whites separated, to keep Blacks in an inferior position.
Yeah. Black people.
Sorry, Black people.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. See, I got to work.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little less obvious. Like I think someone was asking in the comments why Milwaukee is so segregated, and a big part of that was that Milwaukee was very intentionally segregated.
Yeah.
This was not just something that happened that people decided, oh, we're going to live in our own neighborhoods.
And a lot of people like to pretend that's just what happened.
Yeah, no, that's not what happened. In Milwaukee suburbs, beginning in the early 1900s, you had things called racially restrictive covenants. So up until 1920s, 1930s, if you bought a house in a Milwaukee suburb, you signed a piece of paper that said, I, as a white person, will never sell this house to a Black person or a Jewish person.
Yeah.
And I will not allow a Black person or a Jewish person to live in this house unless they are the hired employee. So if you had a black nanny, you could let them live there. But if you couldn't let just a black person live with you.
Yeah.
They was very specifically meant to keep black people on the north side of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
That was combined with redlining, which I think is not as well known as Jim Crow.
Yeah.
But was probably just as horrible, because basically the federal government said, we're going to figure out where people live based on race and religion. I mean, particularly black people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the focus. And we're going to say that these neighborhoods where black people live you shouldn't lend to them. These are red areas.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to give them housing loans. You're not supposed to give them loans, period. And so black people living in these areas, they were trapped. They couldn't get housing loans to live anywhere else. And that happened in Milwaukee. And I'm going to put an article in, I'm not sure what I did with it. I'll put an article in the comments later about how if you take the map of redlining and these racially restricted covenants, and you compare it to where the shootings are in Milwaukee today, they line up almost perfectly.
Yeah.
Because black people were stuck in very packed areas. They were packed in areas that didn't have a lot of businesses. They didn't have capital to start their own businesses. They didn't have opportunities in terms of education and jobs. And so they just got stuck. And Milwaukeeans wanted it that way. That was really our civil rights movement was about fair housing.
Yeah.
Was about black people trying to break out of these little areas that we had created to keep them packed in.
Yeah.
There's an area here in Milwaukee called it's a 35th Street Viaduct, and it separates what used to be a white neighborhood from a black neighborhood. And black folks would march down the 35th Street Viaduct, and as part of the civil rights movement, and white people would rush out of their homes and attack them. It was incredibly violent shit.
Yeah.
And this is a northern city. Because it wasn't about Jim Crow. Yeah. Or because it wasn't on the books as a law, it got ignored. Because there was a civil rights movement. The civil rights movement got things repealed down in the South, but for years afterwards here in Milwaukee, it stayed segregated.
Yeah. And I feel like it's important to mention, it's not like this was so long ago, we should be moving. This is our parents' generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think and the thing is that Milwaukee, I don't even think of Milwaukee as just segregated.
Yeah.
Milwaukee is balkanized, as in the Balkans.
What do you mean?
After when the Balkans fell apart, mm-hmm. every little ethnicity, went to its own little area, and they all hate each other. Right? They all went in their own little sections, and nobody crossed the borders because they all hated each other.
Yeah.
That's how growing up in Milwaukee felt as a kid. You didn't cross, if you lived on the east side, you didn't cross the river. And if you lived on the south side, you didn't cross the viaduct. Yeah. You stayed in your section. And whenever you had to go out of your section, it was treated as the most terrifying fucking thing.
You got met with contempt. And honestly, to an extent, that still happens today.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it still happens today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People, I don't know. I remember people saying if you cross the river, black people are going to shoot you.
Yeah. Which is, I feel like that's worth mentioning. Milwaukee has a very natural divider. The Milwaukee River kind of it acts as a natural border separating
right.
the racism. Not separating the racism, but
separating the races.
Yeah.
The whites stay on the east side, the blacks are on the north side.
Yeah. So, and I feel like a lot of people have justified that, like, oh, just the river helped things play out that way. But it's not. Things were very intentionally set this way.
The whites very intentionally made sure black people could not buy houses east of the river.
Yeah. And there's also the concept of white flight. Like when black people start to buy houses in certain areas, they immediately like we're crossing the river.
Yep.
We're going to this place.
Yep. Yeah. And basically then it was just an expansion of an impoverished area because we took all our money out of the area.
Yeah.
As soon as black people showed up, we didn't want to serve them. We didn't want them in our businesses. We just ran.
Yeah.
And so we left behind nothing.
And a lot of that contributes to disparities in education because like America has, like, we love to pretend that like education is the great equalizer, but from the beginning, if you go to public school, it's funded by your local taxes. So if you live in a poor neighborhood, you get less funding.
Yep.
So you have these rich white neighborhoods like pouring money into their local public schools, and those schools are viewed as better. Those kids are probably getting a better education.
Right. I mean, and that's a part of the reason the suburbs were created. So you can have your own polity. So you can put your money into your children, and avoid having to give your money to someone else's, the perceived someone else.
Yeah, and that's like a racist argument still people have today, but like to pretend isn't racist. Like when we talk about education reform and like how money shouldn't be distributed in terms of like property values, people get so upset. They're like, why are my hard-earned dollars going to pay for like this poor kid?
Right.
And it's like, if we're going to live in a society, like, why would you not want people to progress? And if we have segregation, then you're like, well, that person's never my problem anyway.
Yeah. And there's still an attitude among whites in Shorewood. I mean, Shorewood prides itself on being very, very liberal, right?
Yeah.
Very progressive, very pro-LGBT.
But that's something we discussed earlier. Racism is not limited to a zip code.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you still have, and my ma was talking to a candidate for local school board. And she said, well, we need to stop the busing program because too many of their kids are coming over.
Yeah. Also, it's crazy that like busing still is like a big thing. Like you talk about busing during the civil rights movement because you're trying to integrate schools, and it's like, because Milwaukee's so segregated, we still have this program. It's like, yeah, we're trying, but also we're not.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the compromise is you bus in kids from the north side to suburban schools, but they're not treated as welcome.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think they're assumed to be troublemakers, and they're assumed that they're gonna drag down the rest of the class.
And there's so much that can be spoken about like education and like the effect on blacks. Like I went to a private school, and say what you will about like private versus public school, like the attitude there was very different. I feel like the only reason I did well wasn't necessarily like me wanting to do well. It was me feeling the need to prove others wrong. Mm-hmm. Like there's an attitude given towards black kids like, oh, you're only here because you're black, and like that. Right. It continues well into college also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like affirmative action hires, like racism impacting all the areas of life. You don't get a break.
Even if and the white students don't know anything about the black kids, right?
Yeah.
But there's an assumption that because you're here and you have different colored skin, you must have gotten here because of preferential treatment.
Yeah.
They might not know anything. They don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
They just assume.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Point being, to bring this back to mass incarceration.
Yes.
And my work was with men reentering prison or reentering the community from prison. Mm-hmm. A lot of the men I worked with came up in a very specific zip code in Milwaukee, 53206.
There's a documentary about that zip code also.
53206 is the most incarcerated zip code in America, or was at the time of the documentary. Mm-hmm. They may have changed by this time. But, and that is not an accident. That is not because these black men are somehow evil super predators who are out here committing crimes all the time.
Despite what media would like you to think.
Right. It's because when a black man, in particular, a black woman as well,
yeah,
but in particular a black man, is accused of a crime, they generally, if they're offered a plea deal, here in Milwaukee especially, I mean around the world, but here in Wisconsin, the plea deal is almost always worse than the one offered a white man in the similar circumstances. There was a study done by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that said if a white man and a black man are arrested for the same crime with similar backgrounds and similar criminal histories, the black man is more likely to do prison time as opposed to parole, and is more likely to do 3 to 5 years more than the white man. I also have studies. I'll put those in the comments after the video in the description.
Lots of stuff coming in the links.
I've got the studies. I've got the articles.
Yeah.
They'll be in the description. Point being, so if I mean, and look, as a young man, I did some stupid shit. I could have been arrested for. If I didn't get arrested because local cops let me off, had I been a young black man, I probably would have been arrested. I probably would have been charged. I would have something on my record, which makes it harder to get a job, which makes it more likely that police are going to look at me sideways and be more suspicious of me.
Yeah.
It makes it more likely that I'm going to be on parole, which if you're not familiar with what parole is or probation, if you are on highly restrictive probation, you're basically still in prison. You're not free. They'll put a tracker on you, so they'll know exactly where you are at all times. They'll say you can't go to certain neighborhoods. They'll tell you who you can meet, who you can talk to. You can't have a drink. You can't have a beer at a barbecue without going to prison. They'll put a bracelet on you that measures the alcohol content of your sweat, so they make sure you're not drinking. I mean, and if you slip up, they will put you back in prison. Most people who fail on probation do not fail because they committed a new crime. They fail because they broke an arbitrary rule set down by their parole agent and got sent back to prison. And a lot of the times, guess what? Again, white folks tend to get more chances.
Yeah. There's
an assumption. This is a study that was done. There's an assumption that a man of darker skin, this hasn't been done, the study wasn't done with women, but there's an assumption, especially made in law enforcement context, that a darker skinned man is more of a danger to the community, is more physically dangerous. I mean, they literally took pictures of the same man, same weight, same body type, and then they put them next to each other, one with white skin, one with lighter skin, one with darker skin. And the darker skinned man was judged to be more dangerous, even though otherwise these men are generally identical. Yeah. And so there's an assumption in law enforcement that these men are more dangerous and therefore deserve more punishment or need more physical, physical restraint.
And this is like a lot of what you see when we're seeing events of police brutality is Black bodies are demonized. And it makes it hard to exist. Yeah. And we lightly touched on colorism. Do your own research there, because again, that's a lot to unpack, but you can't have a conversation about racism without speaking about colorism.
I mean, should we maybe explain colorism a little bit? I don't know. A lot of people may not be familiar with that term.
That's fair. Colorism is not something that gets talked about that often, even though it should be, because when you really think about it, you will see it a lot. Colorism is just like a concept of black skin, and all color skin come in different gradients. So I don't know if you guys know, I'm a light-skinned Black woman. That affords me certain privileges within society because lighter skin is constantly valued and it's viewed as less dangerous. There's a lot there. Yeah. And you can, if you turn on the TV right now, I bet you're more likely to see a light-skinned woman than a dark-skinned Black woman. And that's a lot of it's tied to Eurocentric beauty standards. Again, this stream is kind of just a starting point. Do your own research. There is a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And that's something that as an adult I've had to unpack a lot, is kind of the privileges I get as a light-skinned Black woman. Like, I was so focused on like, oh, this is what impacts me as a Black woman, and not really seeing the privileges I get as a light-skinned Black woman. Sure. And that's intersectionality is important. Even though you may be a person belonging to like a minority status, acknowledge the privilege you have within that minority status. Yes, I'm Black. Yes, I'm a woman. I'm a Black woman, and those things are challenging in society, but I'm also light-skinned. I have a fair amount of class privilege. Class privilege. Words are hard.
Yeah.
I'm cisgender. Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah. You cannot be a good ally unless you unpack your own privilege.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think, especially in my work, especially because I work with a lot of guys in the prison system or who have been arrested. If you're a lighter skinned Black man, and this is from talking to my clients, white people treat you as less scary. Mm-hmm. If you have more Afrocentric features, white people treat you as more scary. They're terrified of you. And that's something that bothers the shit out of men coming out of prison.
Yeah.
They don't want to be scary.
Yeah.
These are smart guys. These are guys who want to go to college. They want to do shit with their life. They want to have good jobs. But people are terrified of them. People treat them as though they are dangerous criminals for the rest of their lives. And that's something that bothers me a lot. We haven't brought up the George Floyd killing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to necessarily get into that if you're not ready to talk about it.
It's hard for me to get into it because I feel like this is something else. I feel like people have been saying Black Lives Matter for I don't know how long. The fact that like there's been so many like instances of Black people being killed that like I can't even pinpoint which murder like led to Black Lives Matter becoming like a hashtag, and now you have companies saying it when it was like so vilified before. Mm-hmm. Again, it's still vilified, but now you have like companies saying it. Like, I worry that some people just treat it as a fad. Like,
they wanna. It's protester chic.
Yes.
Yeah. That is something that is problematic. It's like, if you're not going to actually put in, you got to put some skin in the game.
If you're gonna be an ally, be an ally. Do the work. This isn't a temporary thing.
Right. I think what I wanted to bring up about George Floyd was, part of what really bothers me about the reaction in some circles to the George Floyd killing was that, he had a conviction for armed robbery, or I think it was just robbery back in the day, or something along those lines. And so there are some people in some circles who said, well, he's not a good person. Why are we treating him like a hero? He's not a good person. He had a conviction. What the fuck? If anyone, I trust me, if you've served time and you come out back onto the street, you do not want to go back.
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake as a young person, I made a lot of mistakes as a young person. I've said this before. I could have gotten arrested for them. I really could have. I did some stupid, fucked up shit. For men who are coming out, Black men in particular, who are already judged so heavily by society, they don't want to go back. So, they've served their time. They've done their bit. They did what they had to do to come back out into the world.
Yeah. And
to say that a man deserves a death sentence for a robbery conviction from years ago, that's fucked up.
Yeah. And even if this needs to be said, even if it's a current crime, it's amazing how many people will justify like, oh, well, they deserve to die. But like, look at how many like white criminals are brought in safely.
Right.
Like, the easy one to point to is Dylan Roof. Is like somehow, exactly.
Yeah. The man, that's fucked up.
Yeah. This relates to how Black skin is vilified, especially like darker Black skin and Afrocentric features. You are viewed as a threat, and it's met with like excessive force.
Right. And I think that's a point to bring up, is that most of the men I know who were reconvicted, who went back to prison, they didn't want to recommit crimes. But guess what? One guy came and he said in front of a room full of people, listen, my mom needs her rent. My kids are fucking hungry. I don't have a job. No one's willing to hire me. And if you don't help me, I'm going to go deal drugs.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to get me back in prison, but I am not letting my mother get put out of her house.
Yeah.
People don't do this shit unless they're desperate or something's hurting them.
And I feel like a lot of society isn't willing to, like, we'll talk about the crimes that people commit, but we're not really willing to look at underlying factors.
Right. Such. We're not going to acknowledge the pain and trauma that may have led someone to act out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking for quick answers, quick responses, and unfortunately, a lot of time that means taking out Black lives.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you also brought up a good point. Like, there have been times where white men have tried to commit suicide by cop, and they got taken in alive.
Yeah.
So what is it about Black men that makes it so they're allowed to be killed?
Yeah. And not even so they're allowed to be killed. It's like you look at differing media presentations. It's like they will go way in your past, find crimes. Even if you haven't committed a crime, they're like, oh, here's a Facebook picture you took posing with your friends.
Right.
Like you are immediately demonized to make it seem like your life doesn't matter. To
fit a stereotype of the scary Black man.
Yeah.
And I think, that's another.
It's not just Black men.
Again, well, not just Black men. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that's the other thing. Like, even if someone is in the middle of committing a crime.
Yeah.
You don't get to kill somebody unless you, like, if you should get a conviction. Like, unless there is clear and present danger, which usually a lot of these times there isn't.
Sometimes just skin color is enough danger for a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes skin color is just enough danger.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why we say Black Lives Matter. And when we say that, I feel like this needs to be made clear. This applies to Black men, Black women, Black children. This applies to our trans brothers and sisters. This applies to, it doesn't matter. Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Across the board.
Right.
We're not playing this respectability politics game. We're not saying that you have to hold a certain job, status, title to matter. Black Lives Matter.
You don't have to dress a certain way. You don't have to fit what people think is respectable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's, talking about how we treat Black children in this culture is another whole fucked up thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot back to like what we were saying earlier about education. This is a whole lot to unpack. So again, we hope you use this as like just a starting board, kind of do some more research, do some self-introspection. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot to mention we're drinking Uncle Nearest, 1884.
Yeah.
I'm sure the symbolism isn't lost on anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also something like in the whiskey community.
Can we talk about something with the whiskey community real quick?
I feel like somebody brought this up in the comments if you're going to bring up what I think you were going to bring up.
You go first.
It's just like, it's a very, like I mentioned earlier, this fan base, a lot of white males. I feel like there are a lot of like non-progressive white males in the whiskey community who, like, if you say Black Lives Matter, they immediately like up in arms. I don't know if that's what you're going to bring up.
I don't think that wasn't what I was going to bring up.
Okay.
Luckily, I don't think that's our community.
I don't, and I appreciate you all.
Yeah, you guys are great.
Yes.
I think there are definitely some people in the whiskey community who certainly do hold some reactionary views.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really unfortunate. I was going to talk about how I feel like, we talked about how businesses are trying to be protester chic, and how businesses are trying to kind of, now that it's safe to say Black Lives Matter, they're trying to say Black Lives Matter to make themselves look good.
Yeah.
I was going to say, though, the only thing worse than that is when a section of businesses is completely silent about it. And unfortunately, I think so far there hasn't been a lot of clamoring from the bourbon industry, the whiskey industry in America, at least not from the big players.
Yeah.
And the Black Bourbon Society actually brought this up. Like, your silence is deafening.
Yeah.
Black people buy spirits proportionally more than white people. Black people are an emerging market for bourbon.
Yeah.
Black people are out here drinking up your products. They make your barrels. They build your rick houses. Uncle Nearest fucking invented your goddamn Tennessee whiskey. So when you're just sitting there not bringing it up because it's awkward to say Black Lives Matter,
it's deafening.
It's deafening.
Yeah. People love Black culture. Black people, not so much.
Right. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
As long as you can profit off of Black people, great. But actually, like, caring for, nurturing Black people, too much work met with controversy.
Jason Coates is saying, well, the bourbon industry knows its market. That's disturbing, right? Yeah. That's fucked up.
Right.
But here's the thing. Bourbon, if the whiskey industry, particularly the bourbon industry, wants to grow beyond this image of backwards ass hicks, I'm sorry, that's a stereotype, I know. But like, if you want to grow beyond this idea that all whiskey drinkers are backwards and regressive, this is a good time to try and do that.
Yeah. And Benny Eves just had a comment. There's always pandering by business, Hollywood, and politicians. It's one thing to share a hashtag. It's another to put action and money where your mouth is. And yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Like what I said earlier, I worry that some people are just kind of treating this as a passing fad. Right. I want to see people put money and effort in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm a big believer in the whole idea. I think there's a line in the Bible, like, if you're going to give to charity.
Never read it.
That's okay. I grew up very Catholic. My idea is, like, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Like, don't talk about what you're donating, right? I believe in that. However, like in this case, I'm gonna donate way more money than I probably should to the organizations in the description.
Yeah. And
I think we all should.
Yeah. Like, if you're gonna donate, make sure it's coming from a good place. If you're telling people what you donate, make sure it's to spread awareness.
Right. Don't do it because you want to tell people.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you the dollar amount.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do it to look good.
And
that's not what I'm saying.
That you guys donate to. Again, you don't have to pick the links that we put in. Those are just like ones we've personally donated to or are going to donate to. But feel free to like look up local stuff in your own community.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Donate.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where we go from here right now.
I think. Oh, did you mean with the stream or the world?
With the stream.
Oh, okay.
With the stream.
Okay.
The world. We're figuring out.
Yeah.
We're figuring that out.
But with the stream, I think that's it. I think we had a bunch of resources we want to link you guys to. Like we said earlier, we put some links early on about places we recommend donating to. But again, feel free to look up other places. Like we said, this stream was just kind of a starting point. Feel free to like do your own research, and we're gonna put in some books that we recommend. I'm also gonna link some Black-owned like independent bookstores. Don't give Jeff Bezos your money. He's become a trillionaire during this pandemic, and like that's a whole thing.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos can go fuck himself.
Yeah. Every time my Amazon Fire Stick is like Black Lives Matter, I'm like, I don't think you really believe that, Jeff Bezos, but that's a whole other thing. So we're going to link in some independently owned Black-owned bookstores. Like, feel free to read some books. I'm also going to link in some documentaries and articles. Yeah. Just remind everyone, listen, be open, make sure if you're doing the work, make sure you're willing to grow as a person. And we just want to thank you all for being here, for being understanding.
I do think there's one comment. Donald Rance brings up an interesting point. He brings up, I mean, comparing it to the Irish experience, he's talking about that there's a Good Friday moment. Here's the thing. We've had dozens of Good Friday moments.
Yeah.
The Good Friday, like, not to take anything away from the Irish civil rights movement in Northern Ireland, but Black people have had dozens and dozens of Good Friday moments, of opportunities for Good Friday moments. We've had so many chances to get this shit right.
Yeah.
And we keep fucking it up.
Yeah. And I feel like that's tied to like just now companies feel comfortable saying Black Lives Matter. This has been going on for years. It's not like we just got to this point in history where it's like, this is the sparking point. From the jump, things should have gone differently.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But I guess we're going to be optimistic for the future. Maybe protests get things done.
Yeah. I think we are seeing some real sea change.
Yeah.
And some real change in how people think about the issues.
Yep.
I think that's helpful. I mean, for the first time, Black Lives Matter is viewed more positively by the majority than ever before.
Yeah. But it's just a shame it's taken that long to get there.
It's taken far too long and far too many lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. This one was a heavy one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all for showing up.
Yeah.
Thank you all for discussing it with us.
Yeah. Links to come.
I'm going to take a bunch of links. Everything we mentioned will be down in the comments, pinned up top, if you want to check them out.
Yeah.
Also,
so if y'all have recommendations, let us know.
Please leave them. Don't comment on now because it's gonna like disappear after we stop the video. You know how the streams work. If you've got stuff for people to check out, I'll make sure links are okay in the comments so you can go put them down. That way they'll be there permanently.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Yeah. And I also just want to thank everyone for keeping this as civil as it was.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I know you were.
I was very nervous going in. Yeah, like I said, a lot of anxiety and challenging the status quo and like speaking my emotions. It's hard to be vulnerable, so I appreciate the community being what they were. And I'm sorry we can like hit everybody's comments. Vito had a comment or like midway through, and I appreciate it. It was like, "Don't worry about the comments. We're listening." And I was like, "Appreciate that. Thank you for listening." Yeah.
So, all right, I think we're gonna call it a night.
Yes.
Everybody, especially these days, I'm gonna say it. Stay safe out there. You know.
Stay rotten only for the channel, but be a good person.
Be a good person. Otherwise, you can stay rotten with us.
Yes.
But otherwise, go out there and be the best damn person you can be. Okay.
And next week we'll be back to talking about dicks and shit.
Yeah, we'll do a lot of dick jokes.
Yeah.
I promise.
Happy 1,000.
Happy 1,000. Oh, speaking of which, I'm gonna be reaching out to some other channels who helped us on our way to getting to 1,000.
Yeah.
We're gonna plan a celebration stream. It's probably not gonna be next weekend. It may take a couple of weeks to figure out exactly how we're gonna do it. But there will be a celebration stream. So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
Until next time.
Stay rotten.
Stay rotten.
Only for the channel.
Only for the channel.
Be a better person.
Yeah.